I said before, I still see myself as an entrepreneur. So to get in when everything is set and the direction is clear is almost like, too easy, right? The fun part is to be there
Right.
from day one and to help shape the future and the product and the team and so forth.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumi Tech and sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Turing, Upwest Labs, and Hillel at Stanford. Let's talk early-stage investing. Meet Kobi Samboursky, the founder and managing partner at Glilot Capital Partners. Kobi, a serial entrepreneur at heart with over 25 years of experience in various technology and investment fields, co-founded Glilot Capital Partners in 2011. Kobi's vision for Glilot was to provide an environment for a solid partnership and investment model between entrepreneurs and investors. Kobi brings his previous experience in building businesses and effective execution to his role in Glilot's portfolio. His contributions have yielded Glilot 10 exits, a strong portfolio, and recognition in the top 5 best-performing VCs worldwide since 2014 by Preqin. Kobi Samboursky, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It looks like you're outside in this beautiful place. Are you in Israel right now? Where about?
Yeah, I'm in Israel. I'm at my home in my backyard, and the weather is great as almost as always. So yeah, good times.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, Kobi. I am honored to have you here. Glilot is one of my all-time favorite funds that I've been following for many years, and look out for a slide deck hopefully within a year or so when I start my own thing. Because what you've been doing with Glilot, focusing on deep technology, cybersecurity, AI, most recently raising a growth fund to interact with those seed investments. I think that there's a lot of lessons to be learned about how you're approaching the Israeli ecosystem, but also from your personal journey as a cyber entrepreneur, ex-8200 officer, and bringing that deep technology enthusiasm and knowledge to the ecosystem and knowing how to work with the entrepreneurs. So I'm gonna stop talking here. What I'd love to hear a little bit from you is a little bit about your journey, all the way back from 8200. What sort of guides you as you go on these different paths from entrepreneur to VC in the ecosystem?
That's a big question. So I have to say that to me, I'm still an entrepreneur. So even what we do in Glilot to me is entrepreneurship. So I started my career in 8200 as you mentioned, and back in the day, I feel like an old guy now. Back in the day, it was not trivial to start a startup company, right? So in my last 6 months or so, I started to thinking, what's the next step? I already had my MBA, and I was thinking to start a company, but it may sound weird today, but I had no idea how to start a company, right? Because I had built a business plan, and I didn't really even realize that there are people called VCs that will put money in my company even that it has like zero revenues and so forth. So again, this was back in '96. So
No.
actually ended up delaying my dreams and joined another startup just to get a sense of how things done, which I think is probably a good advice for most people.
Of Kobe, I want to fast forward then to when you're creating your own startup. So you're in an evolving ecosystem that is starting to exist. There's a lot of excitement. You have the IDF, you have the Technion, you have the MBA. You're getting all this feedback. What is that ecosystem like? You're watching it today with the proliferation of accelerators, serial entrepreneurs, VCs. The first thing you mentioned is that we didn't really know about VCs, that people would give you money even if you don't make money. So what is that entrance to the world like as an entrepreneur? Because today anybody can go online and do a crash course on how to raise money, how to do a slide deck, and pretty much can guarantee getting through a pre-seed with some degree of difficulty. But share with me a little bit about your personal experience going all the way back then.
So yeah, when I again started, the ecosystem was much thinner. There have been a few VCs, not as many as today, and most of them were kind of with financial orientation, and also just in terms of numbers and in terms of people you can really take advice from. The ecosystem was very very thin. um, I ended up in my first step, getting money from angel investors, and then moving to the States, and then things, I wouldn't say became easier, but things started to roll out. So my first company as entrepreneur, I moved to New York, and then that the big bubble burst happened, and I found myself struggling just to keep afloat, and ended up pivoting to the Japanese market, believe it or not, and actually
Wow.
sold the company in Japan. And it was a very very interesting journey. It was not a big exit, but it's and I've done since then as a entrepreneur and also as investors around 12 or 13 other exits. But to me, that's the one that I'm probably still most proud of. Not because it was big, but just because it was in such a tough environment, and I needed to pivot from US to Asia, and actually sold the company in Japan in a very very tough
So
market, which is.
take me to that moment. You're standing there, the bubble bursts, you're in New York. You're not talking about pivoting, within, an existing ecosystem. You're talking about shifting culturally, shifting professionally. I mean, it's literally like a worldly shift. So as the leader, what do you have to do at that moment? What is that moment like for you?
It's an interesting question, because I remember one of my VPs, when the bubble burst, he was asking me, Kobi, you were always like pessimistic, and now when the world is collapsing, then you start to be optimistic. What I try to do as a leader is always kind of balance the team. Uh, to be honest, a few months before, when the bubble was still, bubbly, everyone was so optimistic, and I was trying to calm people down because it did not feel real. Then, when everyone started to be, gloomy, I really thought that I need to encourage everyone. So I think to me, I think to everyone, this is really like a challenge of your, stamina and your ability to lead, because at the end of the day, it's very easy. It's easy, I would say very easy, but it's easy to lead when everything goes great and everyone is slapping you on the back and saying how smart you are, and how much your company is great and so forth. It's the real challenge comes when things are different, right? And I think most young entrepreneurs don't really realize how were the times back then. It's like in one night, from like being the hottest thing in the planet and being chased by investors and so forth, you are not relevant anymore, and you need
Right.
to figure out your own way. So again, super proud of it. Obviously was not easy, and also personally, we were a young couple back then. My wife was pregnant. We actually moved to the US so that I could be more with her, and then I started to fly to Tokyo every other week. So it was also not easy personally wise, but to me, one of the things that's most important for an entrepreneur is to be there on tough times, and to continue to be committed, and to think outside the box on how you can make this work. And again, super proud of my work and my partner, Alon, that back then was my partner. We really fought and was able to get the company to an exit at the end of the day. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
again,
Kobe,
crazy times.
with that, a few other acquisitions, and we're in 2011, and you help create Glilot Partners, and today it is one of the most well-known VCs in the ecosystem. But take me back to 2011. Where is the Israel ecosystem in your mind? What is the thesis behind coming in with the centered focus on AI and cybersecurity?
Yeah, so back in 2011, we actually created the idea of Glot in 2010. So back in 2010, the ecosystem was still, after two, big, market meltdowns, the one of 2000, 2001, and the one of 2008. And the ecosystem was very limited and problematic. So most of the LPs I spoke with, LPs, limited partners, people that invest in funds, they were like, yeah, I'm not going to invest in funds because all the investments that I've done in funds in the last 20 years were not doing well. And this is acceptable, after a decade of two major crises. So the ecosystem was very fragile. But back then, our thinking was that there's a huge potential in the Israeli, startup ecosystem, which now it's almost trivial. But back then, people were still arguing because people kind of still debated, the important place of startups within the ecosystem, and specifically Israeli startups. And we said, startups are the way to go, and Israeli startups are going to be, the leading ones. But we thought it feels, or VC needs a different model. We felt that it's not just about, picking great companies and just that's enough. We thought that as an investor, you must come with a bigger vision and strategy on, how to pick companies and so forth, and how to help them. And the first thing it's important in our strategy is being focused, right? Because our thinking is you cannot really pick and you cannot really help if you're just doing anything. Yeah, if
Right.
now B2B is hot, and tomorrow B2C is hot, and then the next day it's going to be whatever, healthcare. If you're jumping from one thing to the other, it's very hard to pick right, and more importantly, it's hard to help, because you cannot cannot do anything, right? So we decided to focus, and it was obvious to us almost to focus on the areas that Israel has an unfair advantage, mainly cyber and other deep software technologies, which also correlates very nicely with our own experience. So we picked those areas that, again, Israel has an advantage, and that we have a big experience in, which made it comfortable. And then I think the other important element is that we are very involved and very committed to the success of the companies. For us, it's not about portfolio. So it's not about okay, if company X fails, it doesn't matter because we have 10 others or we have others. After we invested, we are 100% committed to get the maximum result out of the specific company, which I think is super important as well. So I think those two elements of being expert, helping and being committed, is probably the most important part in what we do, and this is what drives our success.
Right. And I think that, two interesting insights here is that one, I believe that of the first six portfolio companies, about five exited. Some outrageous statistic like that I heard you speak at another event. But I think what even more interestingly for me, I wasn't a part of the ecosystem in 2011. I came in after I finished my army service. And so hearing that in 2011 it was different, we're talking about 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And really, we're seeing today another Israeli unicorn come up about once a week at this point. And really, you think back to 2011, 2012, this is when they started. This, if you look at the length of time, so it sounds like you started Glilot just at the right time. But you also have a strategy of going in early, right? It needs to be early. You mentioned that it was, you wanted to, when there's 2-3 people in the room with you, what is that about? Why go so early when they barely know what they're doing?
Yeah, that's another good question, and we'll maybe at the end of the answer talk about our growth fund, which is kind of changed this a little bit. But
right,
we like to get in early. I mean, first, honestly, because this is, at least in my mind, where most of the fun is, right? So I said before, I still see myself as an entrepreneur. So to get in when everything is set and the direction is clear is almost like, too easy, right? The fun part is to be there from day one, and to to help shape the the future and the product and the team and so forth. This is really where a lot of difference could be made. And I'm a big believer that the DNA of the company is created in the first 4 months or so, with the first 4 employees and the first version of the product and so forth. And yeah, you obviously from that point you always are busy in improving, and you can improve, but but still there's only so much you can do. The DNA is already there. So that's I think the most exciting part of the journey, and that's where you can make most impact. Um, um, and what we have done in Glilot, we've built a full infrastructure, to help portfolio companies. Mostly a very strong network in the US. So we have today about 1,000 executives in our network, again, mostly American executives. About 10% of them are what we call our advisors. So about 100 people that are really, that we can jump on a phone call with them, like on a very short notice, and they will help.
Amazing.
And again, you can use this help as a late stage company, but if you start early, you can save so many mistakes and so much waste of time and money, which is so important.
So talk to me a little bit about the growth fund. So January of 2021, I open up Kalkalistek and I see Glilot raises $170 million growth fund, investing anywhere between 5 and 20 million. My memory is horrible, so maybe I'm butchering the numbers, but it's different. It's a different mindset. It's a little different than a lot of other VCs also in Israel, and it's very different from your original strategy of going in early. What is this, this closing the circle with helping now growth?
Yeah. So first, our own journey, and as I said, I look at ourselves as entrepreneurs as well. We started with the seed stage fund. Again, lots of focus on cyber and related areas. And honestly, not in a bad way, in a good way, we looked at ourselves more as a boutique. So we said, we don't want to be big. We'll never measure ourselves on how big we are. We'll measure ourselves on, what great returns we provide both to investors and to entrepreneurs. So if we're going to create, great returns to our investors, and by the way, now it's already 7 out of 8 successful exits and 10 overall. So if most of our entrepreneurs are happy or even became rich people with working with us, we're in a good place, and the velocity or the how big we are does not matter. I think what really kind of kicked in the last year or two, the opportunity in the Israeli ecosystem is really amazing, and we have created to ourselves, I think, a very strong platform to really take advantage of much more than 2-3 deals a year, which is typically what we have done. And also, when you're doing seed, and at least the way we do, you cannot do too much because we really work very hard with every company. So at the end of the day, it's not a very scalable business. So the thought about the growth fund, by the way, it's not really growth; it's early growth. So it's companies that are selling maybe $2 million a year. The classical growth is $10 million. So we are one notch below. But again, the idea was that we're seeing so many great companies that for whatever reason we did not invest in seed. Maybe we were not smart enough to realize that they're going to be great. Maybe they did not approach us for whatever reason. So whatever the reason is, there are much more than 2-3 great companies every year that are being born in Israel, and even just in our areas. So and with many of them we are in touch. We are meeting in events. Sometimes we help them with connections. So just as an example, this network of 1,000 executives, sometimes they would ask us questions about areas that we don't have a portfolio companies. So sometimes they will ask questions about companies that are not ours, and we will help them and make the connections with companies and so forth. So we find ourselves helping companies even outside of our portfolio, and it just makes sense to expand our horizons and invest in companies that are outside of the portfolio. We are investing in Glilot Plus also in our own portfolio, but again, most of the investments are outside of the portfolio. And the idea is to go to companies that are in our spaces, only the best companies. So companies that were raised right, even that we were not around the table, and obviously there are a lot of those. and be able to also to provide them help and support from the position of later stage investment.
Right.
So to make our network available to them in a structured way. And again, it'll be able to take a bigger part in this amazing growth of the local ecosystem. As you mentioned, there are more unicorns than ever, and I'm super optimistic now, specifically after 2020. I'm
It's
super
incredible.
optimistic that we'll see more and more. It's just it's evident that it will happen. So we are again in our mind. It's changing the mindset of being a small boutique to being an important platform in the Israeli ecosystem.
I love it. Kobi, 20 minutes go by way, way too fast, but I do have one important question before the most important
Okay.
question. And so one thing that I'm gathering from you is that, you're an entrepreneur at heart. Not only you're a serial entrepreneur, with companies, but also as a VC, you start off with an entrepreneurial mindset saying, I want to work with the entrepreneurs in the same small round table, helping them think of the culture, think of the strategy in the first months. So my question to you then, what is one of the things that gets you so excited when you see an entrepreneur do something? When you're sitting in front of a founder, what would they do as a leader, as a thinker, strategist, that you say, that is why I love entrepreneurship. That is why I love working with founders. Give me an example of something like that.
Wow, that's a great question. I think to me the most exciting part is this moving from this move from 0 to 1. Obviously, after the first sale, there's so many more things you have to do, and the journey just starts. But to me, this creation, this going from nothing
Right.
to something, to a product, to a DNA of a company, to a living. It's almost like a living, creature that has
Right.
its own life and destiny and so forth. To me, that's really where the magic happens. And so that's that. And the most exciting things to me are the successful end results, but not necessarily, but specifically for journeys that have been tough. So I mentioned before, my own journey in the first company that had a lot of struggles and mistakes. To be honest, I've made a lot of mistakes as a young entrepreneur, and also, tough luck, with the bubble burst and so forth, and still, guide this ship to a successful end. So to me, the exits that I'm more, excited around are exits or end results that came after, struggle. Not necessarily been easy, and places where the entrepreneurs you really needed to show guts, um, and stamina to guide their ships. So sometimes you have an exit after 2 years that nothing really it's been very easy, which is that's amazing. Those typically are also very good in terms of financial returns. But to me, what's more exciting is companies that are running on longer, that are also and again suffering from some tough times, and still finding a way to overcome. To me, that those are the most rewarding situations.
Kobi, thank you so much for coming here. I know how busy you are, and I so appreciate your time. I have one last short question before I let you go, and that is 3 words you would use to describe yourself.
Wow. So I would say first, as I said before, entrepreneur. Then what would be the second one? I think maybe drive to success. I mean, again, I said before, even if the journey is going a bit tough, you should never give up. And three, I would probably say a people's person. I always at the end of the day, we're people, and that's what really counts. All the other stuff is so it doesn't matter, if you're an entrepreneur or an investor, or an employee, or an executive, whatever. At the end of the day, we're all people, and something that we all need to remember.
Kobi,
I hope I didn't go too philosophical. Thanks.
תודה רבה רבה. This was wonderful. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Awesome.